going to give it in. So first of all, hello, Lauren. Thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to have you. And I'll show everyone here. Everyone's back. Everyone's and we have some live streamers. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to Lauren. First of all, it's my great honor to introduce and have Lauren here today with us. Lauren is a dear friend of mine, but also an incredible and inspiring artist. So I'm going to read her introduction. Lauren Lee McCarthy is an artist examining social relationships in the midst of automation, surveillance, and algorithmic living. She got many fellowships, including Just Tech Fellowship, and also Stanford Human-Centered AI Artist in Residency. She received grants and residency from Creative Capital, United States Artists, LACMA Art and Tech Lab, Sundance, IBM, Pioneer Works, Autodesk, Ars Electronica, and her work is a collection of Whitney Museum of American Art. It was very exciting when her work, someone was awarded as the Ars Electronica Golden Nika, but she also awarded many other awards. Also, besides her creative practice, you all probably have used P5.js. So, so she's the creator of P5.js, which is open source coding for artists and designers and people that they want to use this technology and creative coding for creating creative works that it's been used more than 5 million. It has more than 5 million users. She also is on the board of directors for Processing Foundation. And currently she is a professor at UCLA Design Media Arts program. She holds MFA from UCLA and Bachelor of Computer Science and Art and Design from MIT. I am very, very happy to have her join us today. I'm very sad that she's not here in person with us, but hopefully next time we will have her in person. And with that, over to you, Lauren. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that intro. And it's great to be here with you all. Let me just get my little presentation started. Okay, hopefully you're seeing my loading screen.
Give me a second. We are trying to, there you go. Now we have your screen, yes.
Perfect, perfect. Okay. I think we have about an hour today, so I might skip over a few things, and if there's things you want to talk about, like Benaz mentioned P5, I don't have that kind of in my presentation for today, but I'm happy to talk about any of it during the Q&A. So think of this as kind of an introduction, and we can have a conversation after that. I guess I would say that my practice sort of started out feeling like I had a lot of questions about how to just interact with people. I felt like I had a harder time than a lot of people just saying the things you're supposed to say. And so my practice kind of grew out of this series of attempts to hack my way out of myself, a way of understanding the social systems and the technological systems I was noticing all around me. So before I jump right into my artwork, I wanted to give a little context. As Benaz mentioned, I'm a professor at UCLA. I also co-direct the Social Software Studio with professor here, Casey Reese. SoSoft, or Social Software, collaborates with others to explore code and systems as a medium for creating new forms of art. And we're responding to the power dynamics, inequities, and biases that we see embedded in the systems that shape our lives. At the core of it, we're really thinking about software as software as culture, software as art, and software as something social. And as our lives become increasingly automated, we can use the word software to think about any program, system, or tool that structures, mediates, or intervenes in the world around us. So we're not only thinking about code, we're really thinking systemically about the way that our world is being built. And so that also kind of lends the title for my talk, which is Becoming Auto. Just to give you one example of a project through the lab. So this is related to my art practice, and sometimes we are making art projects in the lab, but we're also often making tools. So P5 was not what kind of predated the lab formation, but is sort of an example of the kind of ethos that we're embracing. And this more recent project called Opening Captions was a collaboration with artist Alison O'Daniel on the development of an experimental video captioning tool. So Allison is a deaf artist, and she's working a lot with captions and thinking about not just how to describe sound, but how to display those captions in ways that add a layer of expression. And so working with her, we were developing this tool and sort of captioning standard that we hope could be propagated across the industry to open up more possibilities for creative approaches to captioning audio and styling it on screen, which could be beneficial for deaf and hard of hearing audiences, but also like foreign language audiences. So we're doing sort of very collaborative projects like that in the lab. But I'm going to kind of shift over to talking about my art practice, which I think is linked thematically, but maybe takes on a more personal bend to it. So I think a nice starting point for introducing this is a project that I've been actually in development nearly 8 years now. I think it started around 2017. And speaking of the systems around us, I mean, AI is so much on our minds now, but thinking back to 2017, I remember the first rollout of Amazon Alexa was happening. And I started thinking a lot about these devices that were being shipped into homes and the way that they offered convenience at the cost of a loss of privacy and control over our lives and living spaces. I was wondering, where does the gaze of care intersect with the gaze of surveillance? And as Kate Crawford and Vlad Euler demonstrated in Anatomy of an AI System, there's a complex network of human labor behind something like Amazon Alexa. Everything from the materials used to the data centers and handling, to the AI software, to the internet infrastructure, and finally to waste management. So I think thinking about these systems as something purely technical and not involving a whole constellation of humans and networks around them is leaving out a lot of the picture. And I got very inspired by other artists exploring more imaginative possibilities of what a smart home could look like. And so I won't talk too much about these images, but just to give some kind of reference, I was thinking about Lucy McRae's Rat versus Possum Fat Monk, Julia Scher's Mama Bed, Grace Hallam's Golden Network, Shawnee McLean Holloway's Sub Not Slave, Mary Magic's Housewives Making Drugs. So that's like DIY estrogen in a home cooking show format. American Artist Black Gooey Universe, and Noam Torren's Accessories for Lonely Men. So you see like a chest hair twirler and a plate throwing machine. And so I'm kind of going quickly here to introduce things, but I'm happy to dive more into any of these in the Q&A part. So all these things were on my mind, thinking like, why do we have to be limited to such a kind of standardized way of interacting with these systems? And feeling kind of angsty about the whole situation of Alexa being shipped into our homes. I realized, though, that I was actually kind of jealous of Alexa, the way that she was granted this instant intimacy and access in people's lives. I kind of wanted that. And so I developed a plan to turn myself into a system. So I developed a side gig as a human Alexa, where I could watch you in your home while controlling it for you. You can call me Lauren, and going to a website, getlauren.com, you can sign up to get me in your own home. And when you do, the performance begins with an installation of a series of custom designed smart devices. Things like cameras, microphones, switches, door locks, faucets, and other appliances. And after installing all of these things, I leave and watch remotely. I can follow you from room to room, switching lights on ahead of your steps, giving recommendations, watering the plants. Anything Alexa can do, I can do better. I can anticipate you as a person and anticipate your needs and desires. It feels a little bit like this, and tell me if you're not hearing the sound through the video.
Lauren are my car keys. Lauren knows that I like it a little bit cooler than Miriam does.
You know, I'm usually the one that does all these little extra things. So at first I was a little bit careful about asking her, and now it's like, how else can we live?
Lauren has recommended that I get a haircut every 3 weeks, and let me tell you, it's helped with my self-esteem a lot. I am able to simply approach and carry on conversations with the opposite sex, where at one point or another, that wasn't so easy. Lauren, we're out of toothpaste.
Lauren would know what I want, but then maybe it's not what I really want internally. But externally, she thinks that Lauren thinks that playing music or shutting down all my electronics is the best way for me to cope and winding down, when maybe it's not.
Lauren was actually able to help her manage her medication and take her medication on time, and everything actually got a lot better after that.
You have those friends who are kind of about you, like the friendship is about you. That's what Lauren is like. It's like a roommate, it's a friend, but we're always talking about me. It's always about me, whatever it is.
I'm not some automated system. I'm not pre-programmed. And like Alexa and Siri, they don't care about you. But with this, there's nothing artificial. These are people. And with each one, I'm watching and anticipating and trying to figure out what is it that they need. And it almost becomes sort of like a game. Like, sure, I can turn on the lights or run the faucet, but what is the thing that I could do that would bring a smile to their face or actually surprise them or just make them feel something? So in my work, I'm often trying to find human metaphors for understanding these systems that maybe we weren't really built to have an intuition for. I think of it like I'm embodying machines, trying to understand the rapidly closing distance between the algorithm and myself, the distance between others and me. And so while the performances started out in people's homes, one thing about my practice is I really like to embrace different settings and formats in the way that a project becomes almost like a platform, transforming to take on different forms and different outputs depending on the space that it occupies. And so this was an installation at the Ford Foundation, so you can see it kind of moving into the gallery. And with all these works, with this project in general, I was thinking about the way that we willingly grant access to our data and live feeds to corporations, but does knowing a single human sits on the other side of the system shift our perception? I think suddenly we become aware of what is at stake and perhaps what is possible. And so I was really interested in bringing that performance, not just limiting it to individual homes, but bringing it into the gallery. And so what you're seeing here are some images of the Lauren project installed in different galleries where the visitors to the gallery could come and interact and kind of occupy a domestic setting and then be attended to by the Lauren system right there in that space. And often I'm collaborating with local designers or we're sourcing local furniture. So this was an installation at a college where we're using dorm furniture to try to make these sort of site-specific installations each time. And then this kind of grew, and this is a version of the piece that's a little more recent called Lauren Anyone Home, where we have kind of now a full domestic setup that visitors can interact with. And then instead of just me performing it, I've sort of expanded the role. So collaborating with different local performers, they occupy the role of Lauren. So they sit at a desk. Well, this is a picture of me, but I kind of swapped in with different performers that would sit at this desk and watch a live feed of the visitors in the installation area and then control it for them. This is a version of the installation in Greece and a version that's coming to Mass Mocha this upcoming spring. Okay, I'm actually going to skip ahead a little bit because I think there's a lot more to talk about. Too much time here. But if anyone has like come across these projects on my website or something and wants to talk about them later, I'm happy to. Okay, so I think carrying on with this theme about thinking about the role of technology as it relates to our sort of intimate spaces in ourselves, I embarked on this next project called Surrogate. And it was at a time where Roe v. Wade was kind of in the process of being dismantled. And meanwhile, new technologies around gene editing, IVF, embryo freezing, DNA testing were really kind of growing. And I wondered what happens when our desire for control and mechanization collides with these sort of uncontrollable and natural processes like birth. And so this project sort of started where I had this idea that I just couldn't let go of for some reason. It was kind of haunting me. And I think it came from a desire to understand my own relationship to reproduction in the moment that I just described. And so faced with this idea that I'll kind of introduce in a moment with this video, I decided to just pursue it. I felt like the only way through it was through it. And so I started out by having a lot of conversations with people about this idea. And so I'll play this short film that kind of documents some of those conversations to give you an idea.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi. Lauren.
Good, nice to meet you.
Maui. Hi. Nice to meet you.
Well, thank you for meeting me. Well, I know we've been talking about this, but maybe I should like just recap. So basically, I would be your surrogate, carrying your baby for a 9-month period, so I'm performing as your surrogate. And during that time, you both would have access to an app on your phone that would give you a view into like my live data, what I'm doing, where I'm at, how I'm feeling, etc. And then, in addition to that, you'd be able to actually control me.
What do you mean to control you? Like, we get to decide what are you eating, like what kind of music you listen to, when you're gonna sleep,
what
like
sort of
like
supplements and vitamins to take, perhaps even what to do for fun or that kind of thing. And that I would be able to essentially have 24/7 control over your life.
All through the app, like I tap.
Yeah, almost like we're controlling you like a video game, but it's not a video game, it's our baby's life.
And I feel like I would still feel the entitlement like it was my body. Like even though it's not my body, I'd be like, but I'm the mom.
Oh.
You don't get to decide.
Oh, you'll take the power of veto.
If we wanted spiritual practice to be a part of the pregnancy, is that something that you would be interested in? Not religion, but like...
I wanted you to smoke cigarettes. You can start.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, basically my commitment is to do everything that I'm instructed, and if I get to some point where ethically, morally, or physically I find that I can't, that would be a conversation that we have. But doctors and hormones and prosthetics. So in a way, it becomes almost like a LARP or a role-playing scenario or a thought experiment that the three of us live out together. Wow. I guess this is a way for me to just take it all the way, to just give my body or my mind over to you and let you decide what
in a lot of ways, that
want.
child is going to be taking over control of your body in a lot of ways.
Really not a lot of gay women were having children, so it really never crossed my mind. I just thought that wasn't my calling in this lifetime. So to have the opportunity to have a surrogate.
Well, you don't know now, but can you be sure that you'll think that in 10 years? And then you can't go back in time and freeze your eggs?
And then you select one, let's say, and then it doesn't go as planned, or if there are complications, or if the child has issues. Now you have to spend your life thinking about what if I select.
I would have kept the other bit, yep.
That's a lot.
I mean, it depends on how we're defining problem, right? Intersex children are still without consent having sex reassignment surgeries right as they're born.
What I do know is that someday the way I am right now thinking will stop. And what would be better than knowing that maybe some sort of algorithm that's in the back of my head persists with my progeny. Whether it's the biological component of that algorithm or what I impart by raising that child.
People desire an origin story for themselves. So I think that's why children are so reproductive rights is so fraught, because it's about legacy too. It's not just about creating some perfect baby. It's about, do you want to see yourself in the future?
If you're not sure about it, I obviously, don't. I want you guys to feel 100% sure.
I think this idea of you being my surrogate would also reinforce, for me, this is some strange logic, so follow me. You being my surrogate would reinforce that you believe that I would be a good mother because you would agree to do it.
So, yeah, I guess it seemed crazy. Like, it would be wrong to involve a baby in an art project, right? But the thought just wouldn't leave me. And so then at the moment when Dorothy's, the woman in the last scene here that uh, said this to me, and then right after we stopped rolling, she actually said, Lauren, I'd like to do this for real. And that was how I felt too. I think having all these conversations convinced me of the strength of this desire. And so even though it felt wrong, it seemed like Dorothy, being someone that was a friend of mine, was someone that I could actually imagine doing this with. And I think people have babies for worse reasons. And so we began a year-long process of exploring this possibility, seeing doctors, taking tests, talking with each other about it. And the other strange thing about this was that right when we sort of made this decision to go for it was like 2 weeks before the shutdown in 2020. And so this process that was like so physical and visceral suddenly got transported onto the screen. We're having all these conversations and meetings and appointments with doctors, mostly mediated through Zoom or other, virtual technologies.
What would it be like if I could just keep track of you? But it kind of started to set in, like, oh, okay, this is like a reality. This is something that I have to like really think about what's going to be asked of me and expectations. And then I went directly to that. I thought of you, like I thought of, God, well, how would that even work? Like, I don't want to be annoying. Like, I wouldn't want to just be like, hey, what are you doing? What'd you eat today? Hey, blah, blah, blah. That's like a parent almost. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't ever want to survey another body that way. But then I was thinking like, oh, but that's so strange, like that's kind of like a partnership, like when you have a partner, like mm-hmm. I'm certain like Kyle does that to you, like, hey, did you eat yet? Or like, I'm thinking, it's like you don't need to act, but and it's not that it's performative, but it's like I kind of wondered how my personality would change.
And so we continued seeing doctors, taking tests, working with psychologists, fertility specialists, surrogates, doulas, midwives, and geneticists. It entailed designing and building the surrogate app for Dorothy to monitor and control me during the process of this pregnancy. And so we designed this in collaboration, kind of thinking through what might be necessary during this process. Searching through sperm donor databases. And at the same time, I was kind of researching other artists that had engaged with these themes. I was really inspired by Sabrosa's Smart Mom project, where they proposed a smart maternity dress adapted from battlefield technologies meant to kind of fully monitor the body, including the mother's fantasies and urges. Or Annie Lou's The Surrogacy, which imagines fetuses grown in pigs, forcing us to face the ethics of exploiting animals and women alike. Or Maya Olivia's Tech and Women, which exposed how devices forced inside women's bodies, from vaginal exercisers to fetal speakers, turn reproduction into a site of risk. And then rather than relying on devices of the medical industry, Fanny Sosa points to the ways that biohacking emerges from the history of the Black birthing body. She says, can we talk about the descendants of the settlers in places of power, fed with Black breast milk as a form of biohacking too? We could talk about the practice of burying the placenta blood near the gardens of the village. The DNA contained in the endometrial tissue is absorbed by the ground, making several plants customize their properties to respond to the needs of this DNA. Or thinking about Heather Dewey Hagborg and Chelsea Manning's project, Probably Chelsea, which revealed DNA as unstable and subjective, where they produced 30 possible faces of whistleblower Chelsea Manning from prison cheek swabs that were passed outside the prison. An idea kind of reflecting on the ways that identity can be algorithmically predicted or even fabricated. Or looking again at Mary Magic's work, Genital Panic, where she confronts the policing of disobedient bodies medicalized at birth, banned from sport through a radical database of 3D genital scans tied to self-declared identity instead of the doctor's mapping to identity or gender assigned at birth. So all that was on my mind as all these kind of doctor visits and tests continued. We were freezing embryos, talking with family, continuing this correspondence, and deep into the process with the embryos harvested and scheduled for implantation before it was unexpectedly shut down by the doctor. So basically, one of the final steps in the process was going through this psych evaluation with a therapist, where they had to determine my kind of emotional and mental fitness to be a surrogate. And this particular therapist decided that because I had not had children of my own, she did not feel I was able to make this own decision about my own body in an informed way. And so she took that decision from me. And so this was like a real moment of feeling really lost. Like I'd been working on this project for a couple of years now, and I didn't know where it went from there. It had just, and the kind of irony that the project was started out with these questions around control and autonomy, and one's ability to make decisions about their own body. And then in the end, it was shut down when all of that was taken from me and from Dorothy. But I ended up just kind of leaning into the hysteria of it all. I created a one-woman show called The Surrogate Performance that really blended the reality, desire, these themes of simulation into an interactive performance that told the story of what happened. It probed reproductive futures shaped by genetic testing, reproductive technologies, and shifting notions of family. And I kind of toured this to many cities around the world, and each time the performance evolved. So it was a very interactive performance where the audience could submit their own questions, and that sort of shaped the form or the narrative that the performance took over the course of the evening. So these are just some of the images from different performances. And the project had a lot of different outputs. So there was a series of sculpture works that were created, a series of different film and short video works. And then I made a few different large-scale performance and video installations. So this was one called Passage that was exhibited at MU in Eindhoven, which is a 5-channel video installation showing some of the different film outputs from the work. And it was set within the seating I designed that was shaped like a uterus, guiding visitors as though moving down a birthing canal as they watched the videos together. And Home Birth, which was presented at the Australian Centre for Contemporary Art in Melbourne, which presented surrogate as within a quasi-clinic smart home installation, kind of staging these intimate and unsettling encounters with biological and technological control. So I guess in this work, I'm really arguing for a different relationship of technology to women's bodies or birthing bodies and reproduction in general. As Sophie Lewis wrote in Full Surrogacy Now, can we bring about the conditions of possibility for open source, fully collaborative gestation? Can we prefigure a way of manufacturing one another non-competitively? Where pregnancy is concerned, let every pregnancy be for everyone. So the surrogate performance brought many people together, but so much of it was carried out in private, in doctors' offices and Zoom rooms, and amidst the isolation of COVID. And after it ended, I found myself needing to work on something more communal. And so naturally, I turned to saliva. And the free saliva exchange offers the opportunity to trade your spit with others. So this body of work has evolved to take multiple forms, from one-on-one performances to mail order kits. You send your spit through the mail and get some of mine back. Tear off posters where you can just tear off a sample of saliva and take it home with you, to a saliva retreat. Let's see.
There's so much happening right now. It's a really tense moment, and maybe saliva is something that we can all share. As we spent the last few years swabbing and testing, I think we've come to view the bodies of others as threats. I think people are feeling a need to just come together and feel some sense of connection. So I hope that it can offer that. And I hope that it also, people feel a sense of agency. I think when the world can feel so overwhelming and out of our control, we can at least feel a sense of control over our own bodies, at least in this space, in this moment. So that this retreat is sort of a celebration of the autonomy over our own bodies and lives that I think we all deserve.
So that was sort of the trailer for what was actually like a feature-length documentary of a performance that I held in LA, which was a saliva retreat. So about 30 guests gathered to explore the liberatory potential of spit swapping. And through different activities and candid conversations, they engaged in sort of these exchanges and speed dating, where they were looking for the person that they wanted to swap with. So the idea was, by the end of the retreat, to find a partner for saliva exchange and then go through the process of performing that exchange. And out of that performance, as I mentioned, I made that film, and then this was presented in Geneva with inside of this saliva lounge. And so you can see there's different furniture here and these kind of sync setups so that people could watch the film and then perhaps participate in their own spontaneous saliva exchange if they'd like. And like the material of saliva, I was really trying to embrace the form of it, letting it be a lubricant for conversation, letting it spread easily from person to person, move through the air, take different forms. It was slippery, it was always moving, and it would pop up in different places. So this was a saliva speakeasy that popped up in London, another kind of saliva performance popping up at Rhizome in New York. And this came together in a solo show presented in San Diego at the Mandeville Art Gallery, where it brought together the surrogate works with the saliva works into a saliva bar. And so you could go up to the bar, and different saliva baristas would guide you through the process of trading your own spit with others in the kind of customized dispensary experience. So I created this saliva app that the baristas used to facilitate the process. And the steps were like this. So first you would be prompted to spit into a tube.
Now we're going to describe your saliva so someone else might be able to select it from the saliva library. So what words would you use to describe yourself?
I feel like let's do female. I'm lesbian, but you should probably put down I'm taken.
So you would tag it with your self-identified descriptors, and you define the terms of use for your saliva.
So we're now going to define the terms of use for your saliva. So for each of the following questions, you can say yes or no, and then at the end, you'll be able to review all your answers before we go on. Do you agree to your saliva being used to determine ancestry?
No.
Do you agree to your saliva being used to reproduce biological matter?
Yes.
Do you agree to your saliva being shared with insurance providers?
No.
So there are about 10 questions like that. You could also write in your own terms. And then after doing this intake process, your saliva was shelved in the saliva bar. And then you could select someone else's saliva to take home. So you could search for different types of saliva based on those identifiers that people had tagged them with. Then it gets all packaged up for you. You get a receipt printout telling you the terms of use and the descriptors and some other metadata about it. And you can take that home and decide what you want to do with your own saliva. So these are just some of the show toured to a few different spaces. So this is some images of it in San Francisco. And one of the really fun things, again, of this project was getting to collaborate with local performers and students who worked as the baristas in the saliva bar. This is me advocating for free saliva at the United Nations. And then collaborating with Casey Reese, we made this kind of signage piece. This was the outside of the Mandeville Art Gallery. And we made this like tongue texting interface that served as sort of a advertisement or a preview of what was happening inside the gallery at the Saliva Bar. Okay. And so maybe I'll take the last few minutes here and talk about one last project, because this is the most recent work that I've been working on, which is developing my own driverless vehicle. Hey, you, totally auto. Don't think, just follow. Nobody's driving, lose control. We're making a new vehicle. We're becoming auto. And as AI proliferates, human labor is devalued and replaced. Wealth and power is concentrated among the most privileged. Automated by the systems that surround us, we feel their effects play out on our bodies, relationships, and environment. Directionless. Where do we want to go? Where are we coming from? Can you feel the acceleration? Are you more efficient these days? Always doing more? Faster, easier, less mistakes? This is simulation, auto generation. Nobody's driving, nothing's real. High speed towards the future. How do you know when you're out of control? So the performance is kind of like a test ride, and each time I show it, it evolves and it takes a different form. This was a presentation at LACMA here in LA. So the ride began on ground level where participants were onboarded to the auto system. And they learned that you don't just ride an auto, you actually become auto. And so after the onboarding, you're directed downstairs and you're presented with a question of where are we going? You decide together as a group on a destination, and then you're guided along by the signage into this kind of like showroom or back room in the garage. And as the vehicle accelerates, new features are tested in a play between automation and control. So there's roadside signage and sound transmitted through the car speakers, and then the ride unexpectedly transforms into a sing-along. So as a passenger, you're prompted to join in singing the auto anthem, your voice becoming the engine for the ride. And this is what it means to become part of the auto system. And so as the passengers are singing, their words emerge almost automatically because you're being fed the words just as the notes come. You don't know in advance what you're singing. So the boundary between system and self or human and machine kind of blurs. So you can see this was the signage that was in front of it. It's kind of spelling out these different words. This says future here or trust. So the performance overall becomes this vehicle for reflecting on our relationship with AI as automation amid looming crises around us. And through it all, there's this question about autonomy, that you're being prompted and integrated into the system, but of course, you don't necessarily have to follow the directions. You don't have to sing along, or you're receiving other directions in addition to the singing, and people tend to follow the commands, but again, these are choices we're making. So it's meant to kind of draw out the tension of that moment. And so a second version of the work actually just was presented in Zurich in Switzerland. And this one was kind of presented in the public square. And so we used a driverless bus rather than a car, but it had a similar kind of setup or flow. So different visitors to the square could come and take a ride on this bus. And really central to this work was thinking about ideas of being in public, thinking about public transportation, public infrastructure, and the way that all of these systems around us, again, are kind of signaling and dictating our behavior, with the ultimate question of like, how do we find autonomy within that? How do we understand the boundaries of where our own decision making ends and where those decisions are being made for us? And so the singing is kind of this absurd metaphor, but I think a way of understanding or thinking about both maybe the thrill and the excitement of kind of moving at high speed and being out of control, being automated, and also the anxiety that comes along with it of feeling like maybe some of these decisions are out of our control and we're not quite sure where we're going. So I think I'll end there, and we can open it to questions. But I guess as sort of a closing thought, when I think about this phrase of becoming auto, um, I'm thinking about the tools that we're building around us in these systems and the way that they're never neutral. They're always shaped by the people building them or all of the different forces that are coming together to make them. And so I think it's really exciting to be here with your class where you're thinking about these questions of critical design. And I would love to talk more about that. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh my God, this was incredible, Lauren. And it's so wonderful to see the depth of your work and all the projects that has been unfolded in the last few years. I have so many questions. While I'm thinking, maybe I should first pass it to students, and then if you have time, I'll ask my questions. I know maybe you can come a little closer so Lauren can hear you. Ao is a master's student at Tangible Media Group.
Hi, Lauren.
Hey.
Thank you for sharing the personal projects. I just had a question about why during the presentation you decided to kind of narrate alone with the slides. Have you always done that? What was the intended effect?
Sorry, can you say that again?
So in the last presentation for the Alto project,
Yeah.
you kind of narrated alone as you were going
yeah.
from slide to slide. Have you done that previously? What was the intention behind it?
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think, and I don't know if I said this explicitly, but performance is a really central part of my practice. So even the projects that are not directly like me performing something, I think ideas of performance and interaction and participation are always really top of mind for me. And so some of the things you're seeing here are sometimes actually used in performances. So I think especially in that last one, I was like kind of bringing in some of the language from ways that I've performed or the onboarding for the auto project before. Actually, I've done one version of auto where we actually end up singing together in the end and trying out the system. And I was thinking about doing it today, but I didn't think there was quite enough time. And so what you were seeing was kind of the onboarding that's like leading into singing that might follow. But in general, I really appreciate your question because I really like that kind of blend or ambiguity of like, is this a performance? Is this happening right now? Is this prompted? Is this spontaneous? And I think it all gets really blurry and interesting.
Thank you so much.
Cyan.
Sorry. Speaking of onboarding, I feel like your projects do a really incredible job of sort of immersing your audience into some really salient but also potentially uncomfortable situations. But you really build a world around it. And I was really curious what considerations go into a project such as the saliva sharing project that allow people to really interact with it and get the meaning out of it that you hope that they would, even if it's working with a material that might be unfamiliar to them.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. There's a couple of things I'll say. I think first, with the projects, my hope is that I have my own view about particular technologies, and I think you heard some of that, but my hope is with these works that I'm not being like prescriptive or didactic, and that what I really want to do is make these spaces where people feel like they can reflect and make up their own minds about the things going on around them. So I'm often working with duration. I'm often creating these kind of interactions with the hope that through that interaction, people will have some space to kind of sit with the tension. And, you know, it like in the example of the saliva exchange, it would be totally fine for me. And it happens where people come up and they kind of like start to enter the process and then they're like, you know what, I don't want to do this. And I think that's really powerful because I think the narrative a lot of times with technologies is like it's so seamless. There's no friction. You're supposed to just go along with it and not question. And I think these projects are about questioning. But the second thing I'll say is like having done this work for a long time, these questions of like participation and consent are really top of mind for me. And so I'm thinking about like how do you create these kind of sometimes uncomfortable and unexpected interactions, but do them in a way where people still feel like they have agency. So you might be choosing to give up some control, whether it's you're giving your saliva or putting cameras in your house, but you're ultimately the person making that decision. And then I try to design the performance around it so that you feel like you have control over it. So like in the Lauren performance, I walk through people at the house, walk through people in their house. And we discuss together, like, where should we put the cameras and, you know, where do you want the different devices and how do you unplug them if you actually want the system to turn off or want me to stop? So there's always these like opt-out mechanisms, which again, I think is I'm kind of responding to some of these dark patterns of technology. And then with the saliva project is another example, like the defining your own terms of use and your own identifiers and descriptors of the saliva rather than that kind of being those choices being taken from you was a really important distinction of like how this operates in contrast to something like 23andMe or the you know, any kind of like medical company that's interacting with your data.
Thank you so much. More questions? Zach.
Hi. I was wondering, so a lot of some of your projects, especially one about pregnancy and birth, are often topics that are difficult to bring up within the tech industry and like with the surroundings of tech. Like, I guess, do you have any I don't know, takes or suggestions or tips for how to, really do work within topics that, can be very emotional, can be very different from what is commonly accepted within, a lot of technology spaces. Especially like, as like a woman, like, or like with the process of like giving birth and stuff like that, like with the tech industry being so male dominated, and those conversations are often stopped or not taken seriously. So yeah, I guess if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, there's kind of two things, which is like on one hand, sometimes these topics are so charged or feel so personal that people don't want to, they kind of like shut down or they feel like it's inappropriate to talk about them. And then towards that end, I think I spent a lot of time talking with people and really, rather than coming in with like, here's my approach and here's the project, like I had some crazy ideas that I wanted to explore, but you could see in the first video, it was really like asking them what they thought about it and inviting people to bring their own ideas and their own opinions. So like trying to create this space where it's like, you're not being told what to feel or you're not being forced to share something you don't, or talk about something you don't want to, but instead being given space to maybe talk about things you hadn't before, to think about them. On the other hand, like you're saying with the tech industry, it's so male dominated. There is a huge amount of bias around some of these things, or thinking about questions of reproduction, for example, or sexuality are often just not even included in the discourse. And I think for me, I kind of go back to like, well, this is a really essential part of life. Like none of us would be here if we hadn't been born. So you can't really act like this is like a minimalist, like a minimal concern or something that's like a niche topic. And I think for me, also grounding it in some of these questions around data privacy or genetics or like the medical industrial complex, maybe bridge that gap a little bit between the technology and something that feels more soft or emotional. But really, I think these are systems, and you have to look at all those angles to really, like, if we're trying to build technology that represents our world and holds values that we want to see in the future, you can't just like look at one layer of it. I think you need to think about these different points of view, and whether that's like having different people in the room or having different rounds that are kind of focusing in on different angles of the question. It's really essential. Otherwise, you get technologies that are just like hyper focused on optimizing one particular aspect of a problem, but leaving a lot of other things unaddressed.
Thank you.
It is incredible, Lauren, to see your the sort of being so nuanced about the way that your work address some of these issues. I often feel like when we are interacting with friends, when you're sharing something, and you get some feedback, and that feedback usually nudge us in a certain way. We are nudged to think in a certain frameworks as we are interacting with one another. Similarly, when we are interacting with machines and with the systems, we are constantly nudged in different directions. So, I mean, are we losing control, or are we gaining more intelligence? I think your work like show this nuance interaction with the systems where the gap between intimacy and control is it's just so blurred, and it's complex, and it's not that, oh, we are all like against it or for it, but it's so nuanced. And I love how your work in a very nuanced way show the complexity of these interactions. So thank you. I'm mindful of time. Is there okay, maybe one question that someone asked me, and I often still think about it, and I would ask you, what would be your message to your younger Lauren?
Well, I mean, I think that probably being students at MIT, you hopefully have grasped this, but I think I needed some reassurance, especially, when I was an undergrad there and I studied computer science, then I also did a degree in art. In the undergrad program, there was almost nobody there majoring in art. It was, nobody came there with that kind of pathway. Or even the idea of putting them together at that time was pretty nascent. And I think just the idea that like you don't have to follow a path that's already been decided, in terms of your career, in terms of the things that you're designing and building, in terms of the trajectory that we see for technology and design. It is really possible to reimagine and chart different trajectories. And I think like as we see technology accelerate and develop at faster rates, there's often this feeling like there's already things in motion. You have to kind of like work with the system that's happening. But I would really invite you to like imagine other possibilities for the ways that the world can be, the way that your life can be. And I think that, as a young Lauren at MIT, I would have appreciated an affirmation like that. And I remember one time I was like giving a guest lecture in a friend's class. It was kind of about a practice of being an artist, and my friend introduced me and he's like, yeah, some artists follow different paths. Lauren's just kind of like bushwhacking her way through some territory. And I was like, what? I thought I was like on the pathway. What are you talking about? So, I guess that's just to say, like, I think there's really interesting things that can come up when you let go of some of the expectations or assumptions that are being applied to you or the world around you, and just imagine what else is possible.
Thank you. This was very, very great point. I want to say one last thing that, well, Lauren and I got super close friends during pandemic, spending a lot of time together, sitting by the ocean, sitting outside and talking. And one of the things that I remember I was very inspired to learn was I was getting a rejection from some application that I applied. I was very sad. And then I talked to Lauren, and Lauren was like, well, I apply for so many things and I get rejection. Just knowing that you have to put yourself out there and you get rejections, and that's fine. So sorry to share this story, but for me, it was very inspirational to not feel down by applications that you apply for, by so many sort of setbacks, and just keep going. And Lauren is a great example of that just like she keep going with her work. And it's so wonderful to see the works all around the world and all the body of the work that in the last few years I witnessed that comes from your creative practice, Lauren. Besides P5.js, which has changed many people's all around the world, not just in US. I'm from Iran, and seeing how my small niece and nephews are using P5.js, it's very, very sweet and heartwarming. So thank you, and that's a huge contribution. With that, thank you so much, Lauren, and help me welcome, thank Lauren.
Thank you all so much. Bye.
Stay well. Bye. Bye, live streamers.